So here's part 2, and we're going to go over the basic structure of a C++ program. So in DevCpp, we'll start with a new source file.
Right, and to do a source file, there's one of two ways we can do it. I'm going to show you the more complicated way first. We can go to the File menu. We could select New, and we could also, and then from there we could select Source File. There's also a shortcut key, Control-N, will give us a source file. So I'm going to just go ahead. I'm not going to select that. I'm going to select this little button right here. The third one over, source file, when you click that, gives you a source file. And I guess the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this file. So just like in any other program you've ever used, file, we'll do save as. And I guess in my documents we'll create a directory and we will call it CPP. Inside this, well, what should we call this file?
Maybe just basic.
Basic.cpp. Look good to you?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Select save. Alright, Brian, take it from here.
Alright, so the first line that we're going to do is we're going to write a little comment describing what the program is. To do a comment, it's 2 forward slashes. Now anything after this on this line will be a comment. It won't have any influence on your program.
Right, comments are ignored by the compiler.
Right.
So
we'll just say
basic.cpp, like we'll actually write the file name here?
Yeah. Alright. And on the next line, we'll do a pound include.
Alright, so that's the shift 3 include.
And then we'll do a left arrow bracket, IO stream, right arrow.
Okay. New line?
Using space, namespace, space std.
Semicolon.
Yeah. And now we want to do the main program chunk. So that we're going to do this by typing int main parenthesis, and then curly bracket, and another curly bracket.
Alright, so we're going to create a block of code here.
Right, so this is kind of just creating a little space for us to put our program in.
So
we'll just do a simple output to the screen.
Okay.
So we'll do that by cout, left arrow, and quotation mark. Welcome to C++. Exclamation point. End quote. Left arrow, end L, semicolon.
Bam. And there's also, we're going to add 2 more lines to the end of this.
Okay, and then the next line is going to be a system command, a system call.
Alright, now this, you don't have to do this in every compiler. The reason that we're doing it is so that it has a neat little press enter to continue at the end of our program. And when we run this, you'll see exactly what it is. So we're going to run the DOS command pause, so we'll type system, and then inside this we're going to type quote pause, end quote, and parentheses, semicolon, and there's one more line that we have to write here, and that's the return statement.
So we'll return 0.
We'll return, and we're going to explain everything that we have written down here in a minute. So this is the basic outline of what a incredibly basic C program or C++ program will look like. Now in DevC++, the way that we execute this program, there's a shortcut way to do it, but we'll go through the extensive way first. We'll go up here to the execute button, and we'll slide down here to compile and run. You'll also notice that there's a shortcut key. You just press F9 and it will go do it. So we'll do that from now on. Now it's actually compiling the code. It's taking everything that we just typed, converting it into machine language, and now it's outputting it into a command prompt with the words exactly as we typed it. Welcome to C++. And this little system pause thing gave us this press enter, press any key to continue.
So when we press any key, this window is going to disappear.
Boom. Alright, so now we're going to go back and explain everything that we just did in more detail. Brian, talk to us a little bit about this first line here, the include IO stream.
So when you include something, you're including libraries of kind of predefined functions. So they'll allow us to do things like cout.
Okay, which is in this line down here.
Right, so you can kind of think of it as like the input-output stream.
Without IO stream, this cout command is not possible. The cout command is actually defined in the IO stream library. So it makes input and output. That's actually what IO stands for. It stands for input, output, and then stream following that. So what your program is going to do is it's going to include these libraries before it executes anything below it. Alright, so now we're going to talk about the next line down. which is using namespace.
And we'll also see later on with different includes, you can include things like a math library to do, like different math math
Right.
operators and
Oh yeah.
functions and things. And you can include, there's just a number of different things you can do. Time.
Right. IOStream is just a basic one. We're definitely going to be utilizing other ones as we go through these tutorials, especially as we get more complex. And we're also going to be including our own libraries later on when we start talking about building classes and object-oriented programming, which is what makes C++ the unique programming language, because it's developing objects.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sounds confusing, and that was confusing the first time I ever heard that, but we will get to that later. So we're going to talk now about this line here, using namespace standard. Brian?
So using namespace standard is pretty much like a shortcut to a lot of the commands that we use.
Right. It kind of, and I'm probably not 100% correct when I say this, it pretty much standardizes the output. For example, if we did not have this line, like if I put a comment on this line, which actually makes it so now this line is not going to be compiled into machine code, this program will not run. If I push F9, and we watch, we have errors down here on the bottom. Cout is not declared. Well, cout is declared in IOStream, but there actually has to be something before it that makes it work. So we'd have to standardize it by typing std::. And that's not the only thing that we have to do that to. The nlined command over here actually has to have std::, in front of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll type std::, press F9. Now the program works just like it did before. So in order to make it easier for us to write programs, we can just erase this, and just standardize everything by using the namespace standard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the int main, which is a function in C++, which we will get more in depth in later.
Basically, the main function is the first function that runs.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only function that's required to compile a C++ program.
Right.
And int stands for integer.
Mm-hmm.
So when the program's finished, it finishes by returning some value to the operating system, like a number.
Right, and we'll get to the return statement in a second, and we'll explain more about what that return 0 is. Now, we kind of mentioned it before, but we have these two. We have curly brace facing in and then facing out. This creates a block. In between this encases all of this code right here. So think of like underneath the main function, we're saying all the code between these two curly braces belong to the main function.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have curly braces inside here that belong to other things, such as other control structures, which we will get into later on. And next line we have here, we have the cout, which we kind of touched on a little bit ago. Cout is the command to output to the screen. And now we have these two these two less than arrows that are, facing out, which kind of makes it easy. Cout points out. And then inside here we have quotation. In between quotation marks we have welcome to C++. As you can probably tell from looking at it, what this does is it outputs everything encased inside quotation marks out to the screen, out to the default output, which in our case is the monitor.
Then once it does that, it goes to the next two less than arrows, and then takes the next block after that.
These
which
two
is the end line.
These two less than arrows are concatenating two different pieces together.
Right.
That's how you do that in C++. Now, concatenating, it's a nice big word with lots of syllables. It's a simple way of putting together. Now, there's many different ways you can do this. We could actually have more quotation marks here. We'll get into more complex cout later, but that's pretty much the easiest way to look at that.
Mm-hmm. And endl puts an end line. It's kind of like pushing the enter key after you finish typing welcome to C++.
Right, because the computer does not know off the bat that you want to do an end line. You have to tell it, I want to finish this line, continue on to the next one. And now the most important piece of any C++ program follows this. It followed the namespace as well, but we forgot to mention it. And that is the
semicolon.
All right. What does the semicolon do?
It's the terminator for any function that you use.
Okay.
So this is what the compiler looks for to see that this is the end of one command, and it'll start looking for the next command.
Right. And not all lines require a semicolon, but 99% of them do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when you run through code and you have errors in your code, it's because of something silly like you forgot a semicolon. And I'm sure as we go through some of the more complex parts of these tutorials, me and Brian ourselves will miss some semicolons here and there.
Yeah, probably.
It doesn't matter how good you are, you still miss the semicolon. This line down here, the system pause, I kind of explained it as I was writing it. This is a Windows-specific command. You know how I was mentioning operating system-specific commands before. What this system function does, it's a built-in function that actually goes out to the command prompt. In Windows case, it goes to command prompt. In Linux or Unix, it goes to the command terminal and runs the command pause. Now, if you opened up a command prompt, I can type pause, and it says press enter to continue. So doing this system pause command is the equivalent of doing this. So it just gives us that nice press enter to continue thing at the end of our program. Return 0, Brian?
This is pretty much the program returning 0 back to the operating system.
Okay.
Kind of just flagging the OS saying that the program is finished running and we're done with it. You can kill the process.
Right. Also, a lot of people will use return 0 as a success.
Right.
So return 0 means it tells the operating system this program ran successfully. In many cases, a lot of people will use 0 as a success or maybe a negative number as a failure. And we will get into those later on when we get into other functions. And we already mentioned this end curly brace. So is there anything else you wanted to add to the...
Yeah, that's the most basic structure of a program. So we basically have the include the library, use the standard namespace,
initialize the main function.
Right.
Begin the block of code for the main function.
Return something to the operating system, and the block. And those are the basic elements.